morning. This is Leila Rao, and we're doing our next session of LIA100 interviews. My guest today is Emily Weber, who is an Agile coach based in the United Kingdom. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you.
So I have to ask you, can you tell us something about your journey? How did you become the person that you are today? How did you get into Agile and become an Agile coach?
Well, I guess my journey is a little bit different from some people, but then I don't know that there is a standard journey into this world of Agile coaching.
Yeah.
I actually spent 6 years at art college, so I've got a master's in fine art, which is a little bit unusual for this particular field. But I think it stands me in good stead as well. So I spent a number of years at art college. Fascinated with mountains for some reason, but also, I'd always been fascinated with how things work, how the internet works, how people connect with each other. And I spent some time working as an event producer and a kind of project manager, producer type person, working in the arts. So I spent some time doing great things like giving young musicians money so that they could buy instruments and fun things like that, and some tour management, which is always fun, sleeping on a tour bus, that kind of stuff. So I've always been super organized, I guess, which can help sometimes in this world. After spending some time in the arts, I decided that I actually wanted to move more into the digital space. So I took a shift into a marketing agency as a project manager, which was a interesting learning experience, although it kind of got me closer to digital and helping teams create things for web. It was fairly traditional in the way that it did things. It was fairly traditional agency, lots of people doing lots of things all at the same time, staying late, all of that kind of stuff. And one of the things that I found that actually quite frustrating there was we had about 4 developers building websites and about 17 account managers selling the things that the 4 developers were building, and 17 designers, and it was a little bit odd. And I was always called into meetings as the tech person, the person describing what it was we were building, which I always found really weird. Why can't we have the people that are building the stuff talking to the clients? But that wasn't really allowed. So when I moved from there into a software house, that's the point where I really found Agile, and this idea that actually you could have clients working with people that were doing the work without having this translator in between, not knowing exactly what to say. So this idea that actually you could have people working with people really appealed to me, and that's kind of where I found Agile. And onwards from there, I was a delivery manager. I was the head of delivery in a couple of places, and I was very fortunate to spend time at Government Digital Service in the UK, which has really kind of changed the way that the UK does service delivery, really product delivery. I left there about 5 years ago and set out on my own as an Agile digital delivery coach, consultant, trainer, depending on who it is that I'm talking to, which brings me to where I am now.
Fantastic. So I have to ask you more about your art background, because that is unique. How does being an artist and training in art influence your work today?
That's an interesting one. And someone said to me something the other day that I hadn't really thought about. They said, they compared me to someone else that they knew that had an art background, about having this unique way of bringing things together that don't necessarily always fit together. When I did my master's degree, it was at a college called the Slade School of Fine Art, which is part of UCL in London. And what Felix Slade did when he set up that art college is he set it up to be part of the university, set it up so that actually artists had access to other disciplines and other lines of inquiry, so that artists would actually bring all this interesting knowledge and stuff together. And I think that's kind of sometimes how my brain works. It's like there's this, and how do we kind of bring that together to create something that means it's easier for teams to work together, or we can create better products. I think that that's what that background gives me.
I can imagine. I think it sounds extraordinary that you have a different perspective and you're able to see connections perhaps that other people are not seeing, even though you're looking at the same base materials. Awesome. So going independent, first, congratulations. Second, what's it been like?
So it's been 5 years now. One thing that I really appreciated very quickly going independent. So I do lots of bits and pieces. I haven't gone anywhere and kind of gone full time. But what that gives you is this unique perspective of seeing how different organisations approach different problems and the different challenges that different organisations have. So I think it quite quickly helped me see lots of different routes to doing things, and also it helped give me perspective and a bit of pragmatism to say, okay, you know, every organisation is different, everyone approaches stuff in different ways, but actually that makes sense for them, that makes sense for them, but maybe they could try this, maybe they could try this. So just this huge breadth that you get from working with lots of different people in lots of different types of organisations and in different countries is just fascinating.
One of the common threads we've heard is several of our nominees have been going independent or have been independent now for several years. And the reasons really come around to autonomy in a sense of the kind of agile that we want to practice in. Do you have a sense of this is my vision of agile, this is the way I do it?
Yes. So for me, and I think it's often people interchange agile coach with agile coach, and I won't go into my thoughts on interchanging people in roles anyway right now, and the use of the term resources, which I'm very, very against. I think every agile coach has their own way of doing things, and actually sometimes when you're working with other people with other skills, that's where you get real benefits. My view of the world is it tends to be about people. So it tends to be about how do people in teams interact with each other, how do people in teams interact with people outside the teams, and how do organisations create structures, kind of enabling structures for that to happen effectively. So kind of and effectively and sustainably. So how do organisations? So delivery is one thing, which I have a background in how teams deliver. But then how do we do that sustainably? How do organisations continue to do that and build the capability and capacity that they need into the future? For me, the centre of that is people and interactions between people.
Are there some best practices that you've seen among all of your organizations on how do we put into practice the idea of valuing people and interactions over all the other things that do matter in the real world?
So I do spend a lot of my time in organisations creating communities of practice. For me, that and it tends to be something that I'm known for. I've written a book about it. It's that in enabling people to have conversations that help things like collaboration, like communication, and help people learn is super important. I think the other thing, and there's lots of things, so one really big thing is organisations creating the space for people to continue to learn. So learn about what it is that they need to do now, and keep learning so they can have that kind of mindset, learning mindset, so that in the future they're able to deal with stuff that comes up. I think a lot of teams, a lot of organisations are, deliver, and don't give people the time to step back and say, how do we make sure that we're in the position that we can deliver, so we have the skills that we need, or we have the space to learn what we need in order to deliver.
Does psychological safety come into that at all, or is that a little bit different area?
Totally. So both in teams, I think it's difficult to learn if you don't feel like you can ask stupid questions or show vulnerability. I think so with communities of practice, for example, I think it's really sometimes people in their teams don't feel like they can do certain things. So if you have maybe a product owner. They don't necessarily want to say they don't know something in front of certain people, but having the safety of a bunch of other product people, they can talk openly about things with, or ask stupid questions there, is really important. So I think, we're again going back to people. We're people, so being supported, feeling safe, feeling accepted is part of what motivates us, which again is our organisation.
Thank you so much. You mentioned that you do work with a lot of different organizations in different countries. Is there a cultural component that impacts how you help organizations?
Yes, and I don't think that's limited to country. I think every organisation has its own unique culture. I spent a lot of time working, or have spent a lot of time working within the civil service in the UK, which again, that has its own culture. It's a very old organisation. Lots of people that have worked in the civil service for a long time, or worked in organisations for a long time, is very different from organisations that are kind of new or moving from startup world to the slightly more sustainable organisation. So I think with any organisation, it's good to think about, or good to learn what the culture is, and not kind of come in and say this is how you do things, because each one is unique, and how people interact is unique, and what they've experienced, and what the organisational memory is unique.
I relate because I live in Washington, D.C., and a lot of my clients are U.S. federal agencies, and that's a very unique subculture. Mm-hmm. So speaking of cultures, what has been your experience like within the Agile community, because you're very actively involved?
I think it's a really accepting, wonderful community, actually, most of the time. I think I guess I get involved quite a lot with public speaking, so I've met a lot of people through public speaking at conferences, and always found people to be pretty open and accepting most of the time. I'm not sure what to answer. Have you got any
Well, I was thinking in terms of public speaking is one of the most common fears. Was it something that you had to overcome, or was it just something that you enjoy, as natural fit for you?
I don't know anyone that enjoys it first time off. Definitely something that I had to overcome. So I made the decision to put myself out there and accept opportunities as they arose, and just get on and do it. It's interesting, actually. I'm working on a talk with a friend of mine at the moment to talk about public speaking, and we started to get stories from lots of different people that do it. So you get a lot of people that look at people on stage and think, well, they can just do it, they can just get up and do it, or they have stories to share and I don't have stories to share. And we started gathering quotes from people to show that actually it isn't as straightforward and easy as that, but it also means that everybody can do it. It's just about taking the plunge. I used to find that the idea of public speaking scared me so much that I found it really difficult to even put a talk together, which put me in a really not very good situation. So that I remember the first time that I got up on stage, which was to talk about something which wasn't to do with Agile. It was to do with a website that I used to run years ago with photos that I used to take shop fronts in London. And I just remember getting up and being very unprepared, because I'd been so scared of being prepared that I was very unprepared. And everyone that had been on before me was so funny. Everyone was laughing. I don't really know how I'm going to do this. I got through it, and I kept going, and I kept doing that. But the benefits of going to conferences, meeting other speakers, getting up and sharing ideas is so huge that it's been totally worth it.
I think social media doesn't always help in that case, because we compare our internal selves to other people's external selves and set up additional barriers. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah, and social media is just such a snippet of it's people showing the best of what they want to show. They're not showing although people can be are often quite open on things like Twitter. It's 140, 280 characters. It's not really much. So it's always it's a very particular view that people are showing, and it's a very particular lens. So yeah, it's easy to compare yourself to other people that way.
I'm looking forward to your talk on speakers, because as somebody who works with conferences, it can be sometimes hard to get women to recognize their own expertise. And
yeah,
often, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say I did an experiment a while ago. I set up and run a number of meetups over the last few years, and I was running a couple at the time, one in London and one in the north of England, and I wanted to encourage more women to speak. I think meetups are a really good way of giving people the kind of the first steps into what could be conference speaking in the end. And one thing that I knew is that there's a lot of people that don't think that they have something that people want to hear about. They don't think they have a topic that is interesting, and everybody does. Everybody has a different and unique perspective, so they really do. So I set up the experiment called My Friend Should Speak. And I got people to nominate their friends, or it wasn't really nominate their friends, but it was an email that went to their friend that said, your friend so-and-so thinks you're really knowledgeable in this area, and people would really love you to speak about this. And it was a way of, and I had the people that responded were like, oh really? Really interested in. And I turned a few of those into, I gave them the opportunity to speak at some of the meetups that I run. So I gave a few of them those opportunities. It was such a nice way of getting people to realise that they have something important and interesting to say, but it's coming from someone else telling them that.
I love it. That's a brilliant way to encourage women to recognize their own expertise. And we've actually found that with a lot of our LIA nominees, because we ask for nominations from the general public, from the community. And when we contact them and say, you've been nominated, a lot of the responses were, really, me? I didn't think I'm doing anything extraordinary. And all of you are extraordinary. I think that sometimes we just have a hard time seeing it in ourselves.
Yeah.
Which me, I think, logically to my next question. What would be your advice for women who are trying to figure out how they fit into this community, how they can build careers and lives here?
So I think there's a couple of things. One of them is always be open to learning, and I think that's just advice for absolutely anyone. Just taking the opportunities and learning from them. I think the other thing, and it's been really important for me, is meeting new people and building networks and having conversations. So as I left my last permanent job to become my own boss, one thing that I had to do was and I'm still doing it, is work out what it is that I do, and work out how to talk about what it is that I do. And the best way to do that is to talk to people and it's try and talk about the things that excite you, talk about the things that you're interested in, and hear what other people do, and kind of feel out where that fits in the world. As well as that, it's about having a network. It's also about having a support network, particularly if you're out there on your own. It can be quite hard if you're working on your own, to remember that you have stuff to give to the world, and that you have ideas, or to bounce ideas off people. So having that network is super, super important. And the more people you talk to, the more you find your place in that world.
I think that's incredibly powerful, a sense of learning and staying connected to people. Have you seen a difference in perhaps when you enter the Agile community and this new generation coming in? Because I think for a lot of this new generation, they haven't transitioned from waterfall to Agile. They're coming in directly into Agile. Have you seen a difference in their perception and how they feel about Agile?
I don't know whether it's, I think I'm in that mid-generation, somewhere in the middle. I didn't grow up with the internet, but I came into the internet in early life. So I don't know that I see much of a difference, and that also might be that a lot of people that I work with work in more traditional organisations, so maybe that is a bit different. Yeah, I'm not sure.
No, it makes sense. I was just thinking in terms of they're so much more interconnected, I find. So the lessons that I've had to learn about community and engagement, they sort of seem to come in with that philosophy already embedded. And they don't seem to have the same learning curve, perhaps, that I remember going through. So I wanted to ask about your experience. Based on all these different, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's always different because I guess it's like, I guess when the earlier generation got into Agile and how things work there, the community was much smaller. But if you're coming into it now, the community is huge and the information that's out there is huge. So it's just different, I would say. Finding access to stuff can be really hard. I guess I see a few new people coming in, particularly with some of the meetups that I run. And sometimes I think when you're learning, sometimes having too much information makes it really difficult. Not the reason that some of the more popular Agile frameworks, I think, work so well for people at the beginning is that they have patterns to follow. I've been at meetups where somebody asks about estimating, for example. They've never tried it before, but then they get 50 different ways that don't do this, or don't estimate and don't do this, and it's overwhelming amount of information to work with. So I think it's coming into it is quite different and difficult in a different way.
So yes, the balance between having established best practices versus having too many choices where you don't necessarily get to fail and learn by doing things the hard way.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's an incredibly powerful way to wrap this conversation. Is there anything that I should be asking you, anything that you want to share?
I don't know. I guess it's just, I mean, like I've said before, my interest really is in people and how people connect to each other. And I think that people are, we're more powerful as a group. This group that you're interviewing now, people across the world that really should be connected to each other, and some are, some aren't, is just powerful in its numbers and its interconnectedness, and how community is really important. So I think, and giving back to them is important.
That's extraordinary, and I agree completely, because that is one of the messages we're trying to connect with Leah, that we connect together, which makes us all more powerful.